Good day, class. This is Module 1 of Purposive Communication, the Introduction to Communication. So we have here communication processes, principles, and ethics. Let's read the introduction. This module is designed to conform with the changing educational landscape in the country. Specifically, Module 1 discusses the basics of communication, such as its nature, process, elements, and the relationship of ethics and communication. This also includes some guidelines on being ethical in communication. Lesson objectives. At the end of this module, students should be able to generate a definition of communication suitable for the course, illustrate communication process and its elements, and lastly, assess life situations in terms of implication of ethical communication. Alright, so meron tayo ditong 6 na definitions ng communication. Let me read it one by one. First definition is, broadly speaking, communication is a process of sharing opinions and information, ideas, and feelings. Second definition is, communication is the process of sending and receiving messages, sometimes through spoken or written words, and sometimes non-verbally through facial expressions, gestures, and voice qualities. Number 3, communication is a synthetic process in which people interact with and through symbols to create and interpret meanings. Next is communication is the process of sending information to oneself or another entity, usually via a language. Number 5, communication is the process of using messages to generate meaning. And lastly, in its simplest form, communication is the transmission of a message from one source to a receiver. Alright, so sinasabi dito na ang communication pala ay hindi lang laging written or verbal. So sometimes it could be facial expressions, gesture. By doing the gesture, we can show someone what we want to say. Diba? Pinapakita mo pero nagko-communicate ka. For example, you hug someone. It might mean you care for that person or you love that person. So that's a form of communication. And in some cases, we do communicate but we don't receive a response. So nagko-communicate tayo, nagsasend tayo ng message, pero minsan hindi tayo tumatanggap ng reply. For example, it's a memo from the admin, 'di ba? If pababa yung mode ng message, of course, usually it's just for announcement, communicating through an announcement. Hindi na siya nag-expect ng reply coming from the teachers, coming from the students. So if it comes from the admin, usually it's a memo. It's to inform everyone, and that's a form of communication. So generally, ang goal ng communication is understanding. Alright, later on, we will see why. Pero sa ngayon, I'd like to emphasize na in communication, there should be a sender and a receiver. So for you to be able to communicate, maaaring ikaw yung sender and then you're going to have a receiver. It doesn't mean that when you send the message, ay may matatanggap ka automatically. But what's important is you were able to convey the message. Now, moving on, let's look at this this figure. All right, so defining communication. We have here 4 components: process, system, meaning, and symbol. So let's read the process. Process implies continuity, the circumstances that occur before starting a conversation and even the incidents after it affects communication, as process is continuous, moving, and ever-changing. Alright, so sinasabi dito na kung ano daw yung ginagawa natin before we communicate and after we communicate ay nakakaapekto sa bawat isa. For example, you are thinking about what to say to a person. Niisip mo ano yung sasabihin mo, and while you're thinking about it, wala ka sa tamang kondisyon. Halimbawa ay may sakit ka or nagugutom ka, and or emotional, for example. Emotional ka nung pinag-iisipan mo yon, and bigla mo siyang nasabi. After that, mapapaisip ka, tama ba yung sinabi ko? Dapat bang sinabi ko siya? And sometimes, may regret after mo masabi. Kasi, kapag nasabi mo na, hindi mo na siya mababawi. So, ang sinasabi dito, uh, through the process, yung process nito ay sinasabing continuous. So, pag sinabing continuous ay tuloy-tuloy and also ever-changing. So, yung proseso ng pag-iisip natin, yung proseso kung paano tayo makipag-communicate, nagbabago siya over time. Also, the modes, nagbabago siya over time. For example, before, usually through letter. Pero ngayon, we have email, we have Facebook Messenger, and mas mabilis na yung pag-communicate sa panahon ngayon. So that's the process. Next is the system. It is an interrelated parts that affect one another. To effectively communicate and interpret a message, it is important to understand the system. So para daw maging effective yung communication ninyo, kailangang maintindihan mo or maunawaan mo yung sistema. Yung sinasabing system, ito yung culture, religion, nationality, age, sex, and like for example, you're speaking with a person, a Muslim person, and of course, you have to be sensitive in that speaking with them. So probably instead of asking them, interviewing them, why don't we make you know a short research about them, and bago ka magtanong, kasi baka may matanong ka na sensitive pala para sa kanila, and then it might be offensive, 'di ba? For example, uh, sa pagkain nila, ano yung mga bawal, bakit bawal to? Why don't we try to know their background, know their culture, their religion first before we speak with them? Kasi hindi nagiging effective yung communication kapag uh, if you and if you intimidated them, whether it be even if it's not intentional, kahit hindi mo naman sinasadya, and you offended a person or you made them feel uncomfortable while you're talking, ay hindi nagiging effective yung communication, and at the same time maaaring iba yung interpretation kasi, yung perception pagdating sa kanila. Also when it comes to age, 'di ba? We have what we call generational gap. So kung tayo ay magbibiro sa lola natin or sa lolo natin, most likely magagalit sila kapag nagbiro tayo ng mga biro na mayroon tayo sa generation na to. And that's generational gap. And ayun nga yung sinasabing system. For us to be able to communicate effectively sa ibang tao na hindi natin kapareho ng estado, we better know their background. Alright, so let's have the symbol represented by language, spoken or written words, facial expression, gestures, and voice qualities. To some, it is embedded in the term message. Symbols can be concrete representation of something abstract. Alright. So, sinasabi dito na yung symbol ay nagpa-pertain sa words na ginagamit natin. It can also be expression or gesture. Halimbawa na lang, kapag sumisenyas, when we're doing, when we're showing gestures or doing bodily movements, sometimes it serves as a symbol, di ba? Or a sign. Parang sumisenyas tayo. And that's form of communication. It's a representation as well. And sa pagko-communicate natin, even our facial expression, nagmamaterialize yan. Also, the voice quality. Minsan kapag napataas yung boses mo, other people might perceive it as galit ka or overjoyed or mataray ka as a person. So, maaaring iba ang maging perception ng ibang tao pagdating sa symbols. Now, it says here that it can also be a concrete representation of something abstract. For example, something abstract I love. Now, how are we going to show love? Pwedeng through hugging, through kissing, through showing your care sa isang tao. And that's a representation, yung movements or yung gesture na ginagawa mo. Also, let's have the last one. Ito yung meaning. The attached meaning to symbols, which is either verbal or non-verbal with the intent that the person they are communicating with share the same meaning intended. Meaning can be content level or relationship level, which varies depending on the relationship of those who are communicating. Alright, so yung meaning daw, of course, alam natin ang ibig sabihin ng meaning. Yung mayroong ibig ipakahulugan yung mga ginagawa natin or sinasabi natin. In most cases, di ba, whatever we say is being taken as is. So, kung ano man yung sabihin mo, ayun yung magiging pangunawa ko or pagkakaintindi ko. But in some cases, mayroong meaning. Sometimes mayroong sarcasm, sometimes meron kang ibang gustong sabihin, or it can be a negative uh, psychology. Parang binabaligtad mo yung pagkakasabi, but in fact, yeah, dapat ganito talaga siya, but you say hindi, or you say otherwise instead of saying pangit, you're gonna say maganda, and that's sarcasm, di ba? So, uh, yung relationship level nitong meaning, ibig sabihin yung sa relationship level, if it's not literal meaning, it talks about the meaning that we form when we are talking with someone na close sa atin, or someone na pwedeng kaibigan natin, a close friend, na kayo yung nakakaalam nung ibig sabihin nun, yung code nun, whether it be a form of language, a slang words, slang terms, na kayo yung nakakaalam ng ibig sabihin nun as friends, 'di ba? So that's meaning. So all in all, when we combine these four, we can define communication. So basically, communication is the sum of process, system, symbol, and meaning. So that's process plus system plus symbol plus meaning. And this is how we can define communication in this module. All right, so this is the exact definition. Communication is a continuous activity that operates within a certain context in which people exchange words, gestures, and other verbal and nonverbal behavior to create and understand information or messages.